Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this evening. It's certainly a pleasure to have the opportunity to speak with you. As Peter said, my name is Anthony Fasano. I am also a licensed professional engineer and the executive director of the New York State Society of Professional Engineers. And I will share with you some strategies today for hopefully helping you to land your first engineering job, and also talk to you a little bit about the path to licensure in the state of New York, especially the fundamentals of engineering exam, which is now computer-based as of a few weeks ago. So before I do that, let me tell you a little bit about myself and my background so you know kind of where I'm coming from. I graduated as a civil engineer back in 2000, and I worked long before that, actually. In high school, I started in the surveying and engineering world, and then stuck with the company after I graduated and stayed there for a while. Did civil engineering work with respect to commercial development, residential development, stormwater, drainage, infrastructure type projects. And then I left that world and I decided to start to do some career coaching and speaking for engineers, helping them advance their careers, having the right non-technical skills to complement your technical skills. And that's where a lot of the information that you're going to see tonight in my presentation came from. And the reason I say that is because I want you to all be aware that this information is not just information that we've kind of looked up on the internet or found, but this is information that I've gathered from talking to a lot of engineering hiring managers and recruiters throughout the engineering industry. So hopefully I can give you real good, valuable information this evening that you can use, and we can certainly take your questions tonight. And we also have we have free memberships for students, so hopefully some of you might join us, and we can help you through this whole process to getting a job and eventually getting your license. So with that, let me give you an overview of the points I'm going to touch on. I'm going to kind of define a winning resume, talk about customizing your resume, and then get into the full formula of building this resume. We'll get into some questions that I always field as far as resume length, experience challenges. Then we'll start to get into the interview process, understanding, researching the prospective employer, the actual interview itself, and then the follow-up. And again, if there's any questions at any time, feel free to just kind of get Laura or Peter's attention and ask the question. I can hear everyone very clearly, so we can take the questions as they come in. So first question is, what is a winning resume? That's a question that I ask people all the time when they want to try to make their resume the right way. What is a winning resume? A winning resume is really a resume that helps you to land the job, obviously, but more specifically in today's world, just helps you to get the interview. I think Laura and Peter will tell you, and other engineers will tell you, that right now, it's competitive in the industry depending on the discipline you're in. In some fields, there's more jobs than others, so you got to make sure that you're on the top of your game if you want to get that job that you're really looking to get. So the resume is going to help you to really get in the door for an interview, which is sometimes harder to do, and then hopefully eventually help you to get that job. So the one key factor that you really have to know about how your resume will be read is the visual presentation is the key, right? A lot of people would think, obviously, the content on your resume is what's important, right? What my experience is, what my internships are, and obviously that stuff is important. But the reason that the visual presentation is so important today is because of what I said before. It's competitive, so if 10, 15, 20 people are applying for a job, what these hiring managers and the recruiters tell me is that they're going to look at everyone's resume for about 10 seconds, and they're going to scan them, and they're going to kind of weed out the couple that they want to go back and look at in more detail. So you need to make your resume stand out in 10 seconds visually, and we'll get into the details now. But it has to be neat, easy to read, contain some key points so that they can take you on to the next step, right? You have to understand that when you're preparing your resume. So let's talk a little bit about that, getting into the actual resume preparation. It's very important that you customize your resume for every job you're applying for. And I've told a lot of engineers this in the past, and they don't like to hear it, but if you're applying to 10 jobs, you should have 10 different resumes, in my opinion. Executives look at resumes that match up to their company's needs. All right, a company's going to hire an engineer because they need something from them. They need a specific talent or skill or a job done. You have to understand that when you're preparing your resume. Anything you can do to customize your resume with respect to that specific company is a big plus. And one times I gave a seminar at a conference, and a hiring manager stood up and told me that he reviewed a resume once, and they put his company, like one of his projects, into the resume. Like, for example, maybe they said something like, I worked on a project that was similar to this project, which was the company's project, and he said that he immediately interviewed that person. Because obviously it showed that they did their research and they were, they took some initiative. So that's something that's I think important to know. Try to use some of the words from the job description in your resume. All right, I think that's important, because obviously if they're looking to fill certain needs in a job description, you want to tell them that you have those things and have those skills. That's something that's very easy to do, but a lot of people just don't take the time to do that. And the last point is really more for you once you've developed in your engineering career, but I always like to mention it now, is your network. I mean, a lot of times companies will ask you, especially when they're hiring someone for like a project manager position, depending on the discipline, what is your contact database? How many people do you know? Can you help us to get some business in our company? So that's going to be something that you're going to want to build from the beginning of your career. Start to build your network, maybe using a site like LinkedIn, which we'll talk a little bit about today, right? And getting active in the societies, like the New York State Society of Professional Engineers, and building that network. That can become very valuable to you, as part of your resume. All right, let's walk through some steps to building this winning resume that can get you an interview and hopefully eventually get you the job. A couple of things to know. When you're building a resume, just some tips here. First of all, it's a good idea to put your contact information in the header of a Word document. All right, so for example, your name, your email address, your phone number, you want to put that all the way up in the header of the Word document, so that number one, it doesn't take up any space on the page, or at least less space on the page. And secondly, as you get into your career and you expand your resume and it gets into multiple pages, your information will be on every page, should it get separated or should something happen. You want to justify the text. I mean, at least, again, this is just I'm giving you what I've found to be successful, because there's no right or wrong way necessarily. But justifying the text definitely makes it look neater, in my opinion. Remember, you have 10 seconds to get these points across. You want to ensure that the layout is consistent, and I'm going to show you an example of an older resume of mine in a few minutes, just to show you some of these points. But if you have the dates all on the right side for one job, they should be on the right side for another job. Or if you have your school name in one location and you did let's say, undergrad and a master's, or two different programs, have the school name in the same location. Make it look consistent. Your most relevant work experience should be at the top of your resume. Obviously, as students, you're going to have your education first, but if you have internships, they should be right underneath that. And then as you get into industry, your education will get moved down and your work experience will kind of be at the top of your resume. You want to try to use numbers where applicable. So what I mean by that is, let's say you worked on a senior design project with 8 other students and you were the team leader. You want to put in there, I led a team of 8 students on our senior design project. If you happen to have an internship on a project that was, a couple of $1 million bridge, maybe you did some inspections. You can put down, performed inspections on a multi-million-dollar or $2 million bridge project. Again, these numbers just give people some quantitative, measurements of what you've done, kind of to gauge the magnitude of what you've done, and it also allows them to see, get some quantity in 10 seconds. They can see some numbers and some things and get an idea of what you're capable of. You want to try to bold some important items that you might want to stand out, which I think is important. In 10 seconds, you want things to jump off the page. And the other thing that we'll get into a little bit later when we talk about length of the resume is the objective. You can actually just get rid of the objective on top of your resume, because I think we all know that, and the hiring managers know that, everybody has the same objective, right? The objective is to get a job. So in 10 seconds, no one's reading that, because they know what that means and they know what that is. So you can actually get rid of that, pick up a little space, and less time that's even going to get in front of them or distract them, and they can focus on some of the other points. All right, Now, this is an older resume of mine, but I'm just throwing it up here for formatting purposes. You can see I have my experience, I have company name, I have position on both of them in the same location. I have dates on the right side. I have bullet points here, all right, so that it's easy to read for people. Especially engineers, we like to read bullets. I don't know why. I guess it's quick, it's easy. So engineers are usually reading these things, or hiring managers in engineering companies. So you want to kind of set it up like this. Professional licenses, memberships, and affiliations. Obviously, I have my professional engineering license there. I have other organizations that I belonged to at the time when I had this resume. Society activities. If you have started an NYSSPE chapter and you're a president or whatever the case may be, put that on there. If you are involved in other groups at the school and you have a leadership position, put that on there. It could even be something in the community, your church, or something else that you're active as in the leadership side of it. Put it on your resume, because these are things that tell people things about you. All right. Education. This is something that would be of interest to you. This will be at the top of your resume, but you can see I have like the schools that I attended on the left side. I have the degrees right underneath them in the same format of column. I have all the dates on the right side. I happen to have my GPA on there. It's a question I get all the time, and my take on it is, if you think your GPA is going to hurt you, if you think it's low, you can leave it off. If you have a good GPA, obviously it can't hurt you, so you can certainly put it on there. What I can tell you from hiring engineers in the past and being involved with these meetings of hiring with hiring managers and recruiters, never did we once say, wow, we really like this guy or girl. They got really bright skills, a great internship, but their GPA is too low. We never really disqualified someone from their GPA, but if it was low, maybe we would have asked them to explain it. But my point is that if it's low and you leave it off there, and you have enough other skills that that you can play up, then even if they ask you for your GPA, it probably won't affect your success. If you're doing things like getting involved in societies, getting some internships, if you're doing all those other things, then you should be okay. As long as it's not really really low and you had a problem like failing a class or something, that could be an issue. But that's just from my experience. Research. I did a research project for my master's degree, so I put it on there. And then awards and certifications. I think this is one that a lot of students might say, I want a silly award. It's not a big deal, or you forget about an award. But awards are important because you don't know how someone's going to interpret that. So if someone's looking at your resume in 10 seconds and they say, wow, this person won this award, they must be good at this, or they must have some abilities here, I don't know, it could put you over the top. So my point is not to shortchange yourself. If you can fit it on there, you should try to get things like that on your resume. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about length of resume, because I always get this question from students as well. And basically, for engineering students, it's pretty cut and dry. Your resume should not be more than 1 page. The only exceptions, there might be some exceptions to that, like maybe you did some work in the industry, then you went to school, you went back to school, or you didn't take a very traditional route, or if you're in the military. Sometimes I get that question from people. I was in the military, I want to put some of that stuff on my resume, and that's fine. That's a special exception. But for the most part, if you ask a hiring manager or an HR recruiter, they're going to tell you 1 page for students. As you get into your career, first 5 to 10 years, you can probably get up to 2 or 3 pages. And for experienced engineers, you'll see anything from 5 to 10 or more pages, because then you start to include projects and budgets and success rates and different types of things that companies hiring someone of that caliber want to see, right? And they have that experience to show. So that's kind of length of the resume. Now, how do you fit that onto 1 page, which is probably the question that a lot of you are thinking. How do I get all my stuff on 1 page? And some of these we touched on already, but again, you put your contact information in the header, you remove the objective, unless you have something extremely unique that you want to get across to the prospective employer. You do not have to put references available upon request on the bottom of your resume. You do not have to do that anymore. That's basically a known. If you do get an interview, you should bring a list of references that the company can contact, but you do not have to say it on your resume. List only the projects or experience that are relevant to the position you are applying for. And we will talk about how you can put non-engineering experience on there. But if you're trying to fight with fitting everything onto one page, obviously the first thing to try to exclude are things that aren't directly related to this job potentially. You can certainly play around with the margins slightly. And the other thing that you want to do is have a colleague proofread it. And I put this on this slide just because I know when you're trying to chop things and get them on one page, you can kind of mess up the text, the sentences, and you want to definitely have a colleague proofread it and make sure that, because you're looking at it too much. And I think, Peter, we did this presentation earlier for another school, and Peter had a good comment in that you should try to have someone who's not an engineer review it. And I agree with that, because when someone's an engineer, they tend to take these words and these things for granted, and they could miss something as well. And if someone's not an engineer, they're going to really read it kind of with a blank canvas, not with no preconceptions of anything, and they'll give you really good feedback. I thought that was a good comment, and I think that you should, definitely have that done. I mean, if you probably have maybe a career center you could even bring it to. Whoever you can bring it to is a good thing. All right, now let's talk a little bit. I'm going to give you a chance to ask some questions in a minute, but let's just get through this resume because this is on the same topic here. Some of you might have had non-engineering experience, and you're wondering whether or not to put it on your resume. You can, and what you can do is you can make two different sections. You can have engineering or related experience, and then you could have non-engineering experience or non-related experience. Either way you want to say it. And then when you do that, you want to write the job descriptions for the unrelated experience in a way that it emphasizes the skills that you have that the prospective employer would want. So in other words, let me give you an example. It's the easiest way to explain it. Let's say you worked at McDonald's for a summer, and you were a little bit leery about putting the information on your resume, putting that on your resume. Let's say you had some customer interaction at McDonald's. You were helping, fulfill the food orders and making sure the customers got what they wanted. What you could do is you could say in your resume, I had an internship at McDonald's, and I did a lot of customer interaction and customer service to ensure that the customers were happy. And then you could say something like, I believe that this experience will help me in my engineering job because it will help me when I be more engaged with the clients and help to serve their needs. Right? So you have to be very careful about how you write it and emphasize the skills that you're going to use. All right, does anyone have any questions before I start talking about some other things on the resume itself?
No, we don't take that. Nope. Continue.
Nope. Okay. All right. So, in relation to the resume and this whole process, it's always important to be honest on your resume and the interview. Obviously it's competitive and you want to get an edge and you want to try to get in the door. But if you do something that's dishonest or you're not honest on your resume, it's only going to catch up with you over time, and it's going to affect your reputation. There are some times where it's okay to leave things off of your resume, at least in my opinion, and I'll give you an example. If you had an interview, if you took a job with a company and you happen to work there for a few weeks or less than a month and something happened, it just didn't go right or something, and you left the company or or something happened and you both decided it wasn't right, and you got another job quickly and you worked there for a while, a couple of years, and then I don't think it hurts to leave that 1 month thing off your resume. I don't think it's really dishonest. It just didn't work out. It doesn't represent you. Something like that is okay. But for the most part, you want to be honest with everything on your resume. I mean, obviously, you don't want to, and it sounds obvious, but it's not. People try to take advantage and do different things. You also want to be sure that you update and validate your LinkedIn profile, because, and I don't know if you're familiar with LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is kind of like a Facebook, but for business, strictly for business and professional contacts. And it's a free website. You should definitely get on there and build a profile, and we could do another webinar another time for you on that. But you just want to make sure that your information's on there. It's honest. It's up to date. and it reflects your resume. It's just an opportunity to get your resume online so people can find it. All right, and again, I just have that quote there on the bottom, but basically the message here is, your honesty reflects your reputation and it follows you through your career. Keep that in mind. All right, now we're going to get into the interview process. You see the photo I have on the screen here, applying for a job at IKEA, make a chair and take a seat. And the reason I put that on the presentation is because, while it's maybe comical, in my engineering company that I worked for, they did used to quiz people that came in with usually like a 10-question AutoCAD quiz. So my point here is, you can't study for these exams, but my point is just to be prepared that you might be presented with something like that going in. Don't be surprised or don't be caught off guard. Just stay calm and do the best you can with whatever is given to you. All right. Understanding the prospective employer and their needs. All right, do you really fit the bill? So basically, the message here with this slide is, I talked before about that companies want to fulfill a need. All right, so you need to, again, review the job description in detail and think about how you can meet the needs of this company. Do a check on LinkedIn. Again, mentioning LinkedIn again. Check out your network. Just go to the LinkedIn company tab. Look for people that work for the company. If you know someone somehow, you could potentially contact them, or know someone who's connected to them, you could potentially make a contact and get some information. Or you could just view the profiles and just get an idea of who these people are, what are some of the characteristics of the company. It's just helpful. It's a good way to kind of prepare more than just going to a website and reading it. You can really get inside the company a little bit, and that's the nice thing about LinkedIn. The other thing that I've found to be helpful with engineers, and this might apply more to when you're out in the industry if you're looking for a job, but to prepare some type of plan to describe steps or strategies that you might use specifically to improve the company, the department, or whatever the position is they're hiring you for. All right, this can work. I mean, I've helped some engineers in the past with this. For example, like one engineer some time ago a company was going to hire him to start an office in a certain region. They liked what he did. They found him. And so I told him for the interview, I said, go in there with a plan. Give him like a 100-day plan of what you would do in the first 100 days, how you would build it, who you would contact, and he was like, oh, that's great. And he put together a plan. He typed it up and he brought it into them, and it was kind of a big hit. If you're at this level, if you happen to have worked in an internship, or you did some AutoCAD or CAD drawings or computer-generated drawings at school, bring them in. Bring them in like a portfolio to the interview, and be ready to show them to people and review them. That can also be a big plus. All right, your interview research and preparation, again, touched on that a bit on the last slide, but you do want to go through the company's website. You do understand the projects, want to understand the projects they're working on or any news that's going on with the company. If you can find the person on LinkedIn who actually will interview you, that would be another big plus, because then you can understand what their background is and learn a little bit about them before you sit down with them. Identify the average salary for the position. All right, and the reason for this is you may get the question, what salary are you looking to make, or what salary are you looking for in this job, right? And the worst thing you can do there is give them a number, because what will happen is, let's just say that that you come up with a number of, let's just say $50,000, right? You say to them, well, I'm looking for $50,000. One of two things can happen. They can either say to themselves, $50,000, what is Anthony crazy? We're not going to pay him that much money. Forget about hiring him. Or they can say, $50,000, wow, that's a steal. We're going to pay him $60,000. So you can either shortchange yourself, or you can, kind of talk yourself out of the job by doing that. So the best thing to do is come up with the average salary, and then when you're asked that question, you give them a range. And I would even answer it something like, to be honest with you, I'm so focused on the position and the job description, I didn't really think too much about the salary. I've done a little research and talked to some colleagues, and I know that the range is probably anywhere from, lower 40s to upper 50,000s, but, I really don't have a pinpointed number. So by answering it that way, number one, the first thing you're kind of making clear is that, the money, is not the most important thing. You're interested in the job, which they're going to like. But the other thing is that you're not limiting yourself to a number, and you've given them a range. So that's an important thing, a very important thing. And again, another question we had earlier today, and again, Peter brought it up, was what happens if you have to submit the resume online through like an online portal for a company, and they ask you to put the salary in it, and it's a required field. The one thing we kind of talked about, and then Peter mentioned he had heard this before, is just putting all zeros in. And it sounds like you could, a company might see it as a way to dodge the question, but I still think it's better than putting in a number because of the two scenarios that I told you before. So if they ask you, well, why'd you put all zeros down, you can say, you can give them the same answer I just gave you. The other question that you might get is, what is your biggest strength and weakness? And when you get that question, what you want to do is you want to emphasize your strength, obviously, and talk about it. But then when you get to the weakness part of it, because that's really where this question can be, they can really trap you with this question, is you want to say something like, let's say, for example, that presenting is a weakness of mine. You could say something like, I'm not really a good presenter up in front of people, but it's something that I'm working on quite a bit, and I've been getting better. I'm going to keep working on it. So rather than just saying, I'm a terrible public speaker, I can't speak at all, you're giving them an answer where you're saying, I've identified this weakness, and I'm working on it, and I'm already improving. So it's a positive answer. And again, there's more questions like that you can Google, and you can work on answers similar to some of the tips I've given you here. The other thing, too, to keep in mind is you may not have the issue of worrying about leaving a past position because you're students and this is probably going to be your first job. But just remember that, like as you go through your career, when you leave a company, obviously you want to leave on good terms. That's important because you don't know, if you need a reference from that company in the future, if you're going to end up working for them again in the future or wanting to. But also when you go to another employer, you're going to have to explain why you left the company or why you might have been laid off or, why it wasn't a good place for you. So it's important to remember that as you go throughout your career, because one of the things that recruiters and the hiring managers look down upon is when you jump around to a lot of different jobs in a short period of time. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Interview etiquette and attire. No jeans, work boots are not acceptable. I mean, I say that kind of jokingly, but I say it because I've seen people do it. In fact, all the things on the slide might be obvious, but they're not. People do these things. Familiarize yourself with the location of the interview in advance. You might have to go into New York City, or you might have to go somewhere that you're not familiar with. You haven't been to this location before. Map it out, take a dry run, do whatever you have to do to make sure that you don't get lost, basically, and not find this place. All right? Give yourself plenty of time to get there. Wear a suit. I mean, that's always my recommendation. I know some people say, well, what if it's a laid-back company? Listen, you can't go wrong if you get dressed up formally. You really can't go wrong. I mean, they're not going to say, wow, this person's dressed up too much, right? So I just wouldn't take any chances with that. Shut off your cell phone. Again, that's another one. I've seen people sitting in the lobby playing games on their phone. Just shut the phone off before you go into the building, and don't even take a chance with it. Show up at least 15 minutes early. A lot of times there'll be paperwork that you have to do, so you want to get there early, get that done, so you can stay focused on the interview. Pay a compliment to the interviewers. What I mean by that is if you're at the office early and you're walking around, you see some of their projects on the wall, they might have pictures of projects, you might have read something on their website. You could say something like, wow, I read about your bridge project. It's really great. I drive over that bridge. It's a great, it looks like you guys did a great job or something, just to kick the interview off in the right way. And again, I'm not telling you to make something up, but if you see something in their office, use it. I think it's a good way to start things off positively. Do not cut people off during the interview. When we go to interviews, we always get so excited, and we want to answer questions and tell people how good we are at certain things, which is understandable. But we want to just let them talk too. Let them ask the questions. Let them get everything out, and then you can respond. don't. The last one's kind of a funny one, but I've heard this too from recruiters. You don't want to impose, and you don't want to ask for a drink or ask them for something. But if they offer it to you, it's also nice to just accept something, a glass of water or something. Again, just keeping the whole energy like in the interview positive. All right, so let's get into the actual interview itself. The first thing that's going to happen most likely when you get into the room is they're going to say to you, Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself. And this is something that can be a little bit of a trap because most engineers will just go on and on about what they've done, their accomplishments, and while again that's understandable that the reason that you do that, you want to try to. I recommend having something prepared that's a couple of minutes long, and it highlights some of the key strengths that you have or some of the key things you've worked on that relate to this company. So, for example, maybe you're focusing on an internship and some of your strengths and what you accomplished. Maybe you're focusing on your senior design project or, something along those lines, and emphasize a few of your strengths. All right. Then, once you've done that, what I recommend you try to do is ask them a question, the interviewer a question, something along the lines of, I've read this job description, and obviously I'm very interested in the job, but I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about some of the day-to-day responsibilities of what I would be doing here. And usually what they'll do is they'll tell you. And they will go into a thing for a few minutes, and they'll tell you, you're going to be doing field inspections and inspection reports and meeting with your supervisor, right? And while they're doing that, you should just be listening to them, taking it all in, and thinking about how you can match up to that. So have you done things like that before? Have you done things, or do you have skills that are applicable to those tasks that you can tell them about? And then once they're finished, then you want to come back and present yourself, your skills, and your experience as a perfect choice to fulfill that need exactly. So you could say, well, that's great because in my internship I did inspections and I did reports and I met with a supervisor. And if you didn't, you just try to say, well, that's great because I have skills where I had to do similar types of things like go out in the field on my senior design project and do some inspection work. You just want to try to match it up as best you can. Right? And the analogy that I always use for this, which is kind of a silly one, I think explains it pretty well. If you walked into the supermarket and you said to someone that worked there, do you have any milk here? And they looked at you and said, no, we don't have any milk, but we have a tomato. Do you want a tomato? You're going to say to yourself, tomato? I don't want a tomato. I came here for milk. But if they say to you, oh, yeah, we have milk. It's in aisle 6. What are you going to do? You're going to go to aisle 6, you're going to buy the milk. So my point is, if you go into an interview and you tell them all these things about yourself, but they really don't care about them, you're not helping yourself. So what you need to do is find out what they need first and then tell them how you have that. And if you do that properly, your chances of getting a job will increase dramatically. In fact, I've happened to help a lot of engineers get jobs with this specific strategy in itself, from recent grads all the way up to higher level executives. You also want to be prepared to answer any questions, concerns, or objections that they may have. Right? So one, for example, might be if they ask your GPA and you think it's it's lower than it should be, then you got to be prepared to talk about that a little bit. Like maybe it took me a little while to get adjusted at school. I didn't do so well in the beginning, but I closed it out strong. Right? Or whatever the case, you took a year off of school and it's on your resume. You just want to be able to explain it. Nothing to be afraid about, but just be prepared so you're not caught off guard. And lastly, there's nothing wrong with asking the company when they plan on making a decision. Just say something like, when do you think I might hear from you? And if they say a couple of weeks, and you say, okay, great. And then in a couple of weeks, you can follow up with them. Any questions on the interview process? Okay. All right, so that pretty much covers the resume and interview process. And if you think of questions in the next few minutes, we'll take them at the end. But right now, I'm just going to touch a little bit briefly on the path to licensure, to getting your license in New York State. That's something that's very important. Getting your engineering license will open up a lot of doors for you. It will boost your credibility, and it will give you a lot of opportunities in your career. Right? So I'm going to explain to you kind of the process for doing that. At the NYSSPE, we try to help students to understand this process and help them to get licensed. And then once engineers are licensed, then we also protect the license. We do a lot of lobbying and legislative work to try to ensure that you know, that the license remains what it is, and it remains that you have certain capabilities and protections. So first of all, the first thing you would do is obviously get your education. So if you've gone to an ABET accredited school for engineering or engineering technology, then you are automatically permitted to sit for the exam, and you can just go directly to the NCEES.org website, and you can register for the exam. And if you are if you're engineering, if you're an engineering degree, you can take it within 20 hours of graduating right now, which is pretty much your second semester. And if you're engineering technology, I believe it's right after you have to graduate, and then you can take it. If you're a foreign student or attended have some non-ABET education courses, then you have to contact the state of New York, and you have to actually go through them and submit an application so that they can review your experience, and then they'll advise you on what steps you need to take next. All right. So if you do go directly to the NCEES website, you can just go to ncees.org and click on register for the exam. It gives you a pull down, and you can go to New York State, and it will explain the exact process for you and what you need to do. And it's all going to be done through them. It's fairly simple. I went through it today. Actually, I met with the state because it's a new process now, because now the programs, this exam is on the computer. So this exam can essentially be taken now. It used to be twice a year on 2 specific dates. Now you can take this exam in 4 different windows throughout the year. The first 2 months of every quarter. So like January and February, you can pretty much take it on a lot of different days in those months by going to a testing center. And then March, they'll do like the grading, and they take time to get ready for the next round. Then in April, May, you'll be able to take it again. And then in June, they do the grading and whatnot. So that's going to be the rotation, which has already started. The actual first exams will be in January, but the registration started in November. And the nice thing about it is now when you go in there, the reference manual is on the computer. It's very easily searchable. They give you a reference manual to use. The questions are on the computer. And there's even a calculator on the computer, although it's still recommended you bring your own calculator that is within the guidelines of what the ones you're allowed to bring. And the other nice thing about it is you get your grades within 7 to 10 days after you take it, which is one of the best things, because I remember when I took it, I was waiting forever. And I was, kind of just very suspenseful, and then I found out I got like a 71 on the exam, and I passed. So I really didn't care if it was a 71 or a 99, but the bottom line was I passed it, and that was a good thing. So you'll be able to get those results a little quicker. And what will happen is when you register on this website that you're seeing on the screen right now, it'll force you to create your own profile, and the profile you can log into, and when you log in, they'll email you when your grades are ready, and you'll log in and see your grades, and that's how it's going to work. And this is now a 6-hour exam. It used to be an 8-hour exam. So it's now a 6-hour exam, and then after you've passed this exam, you'll go on and get your working experience. And in New York right now, you need 4 years of design experience, and there's guidelines on the state education website, which is the website that was on the previous slide. If you go to the New York State Education Department, click on the Office of Professions for Engineering, you can look at what they consider design experience and what experience is accepted. And you need 4 years of experience or 3 years and a master's degree. And then you can apply for the second part of the exam, which is the professional engineering exam.
Anthony, I just want to point out something. I don't know how many of you are in the engineering technology curriculum, but if you're in that curriculum, it'll be more than 4 years experience that you need as well. So you just want to make sure that you read up on it on the website, because it may vary depending on the type of degree you have.
Yeah, that's a good point, Peter. If you go to the website, there's a table, and the table tells you all the amounts of years and the different experience levels that you can that you have to do in order to, based on what your background is. All right, and then you'll have the 8-hour PE exam, And then if you sit for that and pass it, then you get your licensed professional engineering license in New York, and you can transfer that pretty much to any other state. Some of the states have different requirements of what you have to do to transfer. Most of them is pretty much a form and an application. Some of them require you to take a short exam, maybe an hour or two, to get your license in another state. So that's the process for FE to PE, and I'll give you some final closing thoughts on everything we talked about today, and then we'll open it up for questions. The one thing I do want to do briefly, too, is I'll show you our website, if I can, real quick, and some of the information we have for students on it. But basically, just to sum up what I spoke about, the winning resume is the one that's going to get you into that interview and hopefully eventually get you to land the job. Hiring managers are going to look at your resume for 10 seconds initially and scan through it to decide if they want to look at it again or possibly interview you. Your resume definitely should be customized for every job you apply for. You should be honest throughout the job search. Build a strong presence on and a network on LinkedIn and try to leverage that. And again, that's a whole other webinar that we can do for you in the future. Do your research on a company prior to an interview, right? And be prepared to discuss, parts of their website, what's going on with them. That's important as you prep for the interview. Show up on time for your interview, dress appropriately, turn your cell phone off. Be sure to ask that very important question in the interview about what the specific duties of the job are so that you can present yourself as a match. And then ensure that you take that FE exam ASAP so that you can get that under your belt, because that's the kind of exam that if you don't take it right away, it's very technical, that you could lose it. You really could lose those skills, and it'll be hard to pass. All right, this is my information that you see on the screen. If anyone has questions at any time beyond this, you can email me. You can call me. Again, it's free. We have a free membership for students. You can fill out the application and really...
Applications have been distributed, Anthony. They all
Okay,
have.
great.
So if you don't get about 25 applications in, it's their fault, not mine.
Yeah, Anthony, I know you can't see us, but I just want to let you know we do have about 25 folks in the room tonight.
Okay. Great.
Which I know is a great turnout. That was better than we were actually hoping for. I just have one question for the students here. What year is everybody in here? You're all seniors, so this is all very relevant to you. Is anybody here currently a student member of NYSSPE or NSPE? No, they're all shaking their heads no. Okay, so this is something that's very important. I think everybody here, take the opportunity. It's a free membership. Please come to our meetings, interact with us. There's a chapter here in Suffolk. There's a chapter here in Nassau. We're very interested in having you come interact with us. We want you to meet the professionals that are already in their careers. It's very interesting to see the presentation that we put on, but it's also very helpful for you because you get to meet people who, you never know, you may meet somebody who is working for a company where you're going for an interview.
It's an awesome networking opportunity.
Right. Then you can put on your resume that you have a reference from somebody that works for the company that you're interviewing with. So it's very important that you come interact with us. Sorry, Anthony, I just wanted to get that out there.
No, that's great. That's great. And I think that's a great turnout, and I think that it's, I commend all of you for coming out and trying to obviously get information that's going to help you to jumpstart your career, and I hope it does that. And you have, Laura and Peter there, local. I mean, they're PEs. They have a lot of experience. They can also give you advice. And the one thing I want to show you real quick before we end out today is our website, NYSSPE.org. We have a blog, and we have a lot of articles on it, but all you have to do is come to the blog and click the one that's Info for Engineering Students, and you'll see information like right here, registration opens for the new computer-based fundamentals, and we give the whole process. Here's another article, steps for becoming a licensed professional engineer in New York, and we have it all laid out with charts, and everything is here for you. And while this is on our website, as a member, we do newsletters from time to time. We distribute these articles so that you make sure that you stay up to date with everything going on with the New York licensing process. So, that's one of the things that I've really tried to do since I've been here is get us more active online. We've got a Facebook page now. We're getting pretty active with this stuff, and the idea is that we need to make sure that the students get the information so that they understand how they can get ahead, how they can be on top of their game, and that's what we're trying to do. So please join us. I think we've got a lot of positive things gearing up, and we actually have our annual conference this year in Long Island. Our incoming president, Tom Petrarca, is from Long Island, and so we have a lot of things going on in Long Island right now. So with that, I won't take any more of your time, but I do want to thank all of you for coming out, And thanks to Laura and Peter too for spending the time here to help us out. And if there's any other questions, I'll take them.
I have a question. One question. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I would like to ask you, if this society is a new society, was not existing before?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Around for quite a long time.
We actually, New York is the founding chapter of the National Society of Professional Engineers, correct, Anthony?
Yep.
And we are, what, 100 and how many years old? 100 and...
100, and I don't even remember, but...
About 100 years.
Yeah, we're slightly over 100 years old. Yeah.
We have been visited by ASME and SME and IEEE, but we've never been approached by that professional engineering society except
Now.
this week.
Right.
Well,
what's the question?
It's just a comment.
Comment.
And I'll address it. Essentially, those groups, I mean, I know this is the room that ASME has their meetings in. I've been to several of them here. Those groups are more about that specific discipline. So you'll have the ASME come in and talk about why it's 100 degrees in this room when it doesn't need to be. You'll have, the ASCE come in and talk about the concrete and the latest things in concrete. You'll even get IEEE, we'll talk about all sorts of electrical issues. We talk about the profession as a whole. And as Anthony mentioned earlier, one of our main objectives is to protect your license because there is a lot of legislation going back and forth in New York State that sort of is chipping away at what you need to be a licensed professional engineer to do and what you don't. Several years back, there was an issue with home inspections. So there's always something on the bill, and we always monitor the legislative calendar to ensure that the laws that are being pending are not going to interfere with your ability as a licensed professional to earn a living.
I want to ask Anthony one more question. Does he have a brother? His name is Andrew Bassano?
Do you have a brother named Andrew, Anthony?
What's that?
Do you have a brother named Andrew?
No, I don't.
Different Fasano.
Or he's a graduate from here?
Oh, he's a graduate from here.
Had an Anthony Fasano graduate here.
Well, I see a lot of students feverishly filling out the applications, which is a good thing. There's no downside to becoming a member. It's free. Take advantage of it. We want you as student members, but we want you as members for life. It's a great networking opportunity. To be honest with you, the job that I currently have, I got through networking through this society. I met the current president of the Suffolk chapter 15 years ago. I did one thing for him. I planned a society annual dinner for him. He took a liking to the work that I did for him, and he hired me at Stony Brook. Didn't know anything about my engineering background, just through the interaction through the society. So it's a great tool. We also want to help you as far as interviews are concerned. If you have questions about how to interview, if you want to do a mock interview, we have people that would be willing to sit with you and do that, especially the young ladies. I know this is kind of a different area for you. I know you probably don't see a lot of gals in this field. I'm one of them. It's, you could see there's 25 people here and two of you by yourself. So if you want to discuss something like that, please feel free to get a hold of me. So. Or the girl. I get the girl, the woman, because, there's not a lot of us. Does anybody have any questions about licensing?
Yeah. How many times can you take the test?
That's actually, if you need to. Yeah.
And all I can tell you is try to pass it on the first shot. You're not going to want to have to do it.
And take the FE now. If you're not registered for the FE, take it now. Register, take it now.
Take it as soon as you possibly can.
Right, because it never goes away. The sooner you take it, the easier it will be. You go later on in your career, you start to forget things in areas where you're not practicing. All the different disciplines, you're going to focus on one specific thing as you get into your career, and the stuff that you're not focused on, you're going to forget about. So take it now.
Yeah, so I know a lot of engineers that are older now, and they couldn't get their PE license because they probably could pass the PE exam, but they can't pass the FE exam now because it's really stuff that you see in school. It's a lot of equations and calculations, so you need to take that exam right away. And with the new FE exam, you can take the exam up to 3 times in 12 months. But yeah, like Peter said, you want to nail it on the first try regardless. No one wants to take a 6-hour exam more than once. But
has anybody registered for the exam? Has anybody registered for the exam? No. Has anybody heard about the exam before tonight? Okay, good. Well, no, we walk into rooms and we get people who haven't heard about it. So, has anybody started sending their resumes yet? Yes, gone on interviews? Nobody's gone on interviews yet? You did? You're working. You came in with a hard hat.
Just so, Anthony, just so you know, we have a young lady in the room. She's got construction boots and a hard hat, and she
Nice.
caught Laura's attention immediately.
Yes. And I know you say always go in a suit, Anthony, and I'm sometimes, depending upon the job you're going for, I don't always agree with that, you know, especially a girl going into a construction field. Sometimes I feel like it's better to go dress for the part you're interviewing for, but, and I have done that on occasion, but, you know, you have to use your own discretion. Anthony is correct. It never hurts to dress up.
Better to be overdressed.
Better to be overdressed than underdressed, but you also have to make them understand as a young lady who's going for a job in the field that you're not afraid to get dirty. So, well, then you don't apply for the job. Then you're in the wrong field. Yeah.
Goes for the guys, too. Any other questions for Anthony while we still have him here? All right, I think
We have access to his presentation.
Anthony,
yep.
do you have any problems with this? You pass out the presentation?
Oh no, yeah, I can email the presentation. The PDF.
I'll send it. I'll send it to the professor.
Oh, you got it. Okay, yeah, that's right.
All right.
You can send it around. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so thanks again, everyone, for coming, and you know, we look forward to having you as members, and you have my information here. You'll have it in the presentation, and if you want to get in touch with me or reach out, feel free and start to use our resources.
Anthony, why don't you stay on the line for a couple of minutes? If anybody wants to ask questions one-on-one, Anthony can hang
Sure.
out. Pete and I can hang out for a minute. We can, correct me if I'm wrong, Pete, we can collect those applications and process them? Because I believe it's just sending them in, right?
Sure, we can do that if we
Yep.
want.
Right.
The last seminar, there were only 4 people, so I
Right.
said, take care.
Take them in. Yeah, but I mean,